Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Wednesday webinar. This is Mike Walmsley. I'm delighted to have with me Nigel Risner today, a best-selling author. It's a Zoo Around Here was a fabulous read, by the way, if you've ever get the chance to read that book. And Nigel will tell you more about his own recent book, the latest development of that thinking as he comes on. But I want to just tell you a bit more about Nigel. I first met him feels like about 15 years ago. And during that time frame, I've seen literally hundreds of business speakers. Many of you will know that I built a peer-to-peer learning program. And the premise of that was you'd have an audience of recruitment directors and then a world-class business speaker. So I had a free education in essence for, I don't know, 10 years or so. Nigel was one of the most impactful of those speakers along that journey. The session that we filmed with him a couple of years ago now, it's not only deep and profound and goes right to the heart of how you get more out of yourself and out of your people, but it's also hilarious. Nigel, I kind of think that in a previous life you may have been a comedian because you bring humor into live presentations, which is a rare skill to take something that might be a dry subject and make it funny. So delighted to have you here, my friend, and very much looking forward to your session. Would you give a brief introduction about yourself, just to expand on what I've said, please? And
delighted to.
Perhaps tell the delegates about your latest book.
Delighted to. I hope you can hear me clearly.
All good, yeah.
So my background was originally commercial finance, and I used to fund nursing homes and residential homes, pubs and hotels. And after funding, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of businesses, what I really wanted to do was to work with people and make their businesses better. So I started speaking and consulting in the world of motivational speaking. And then over the last 10 years, I've really honed the skills of communication in the workplace, which came from a book that I wrote called It's a Zoo Around Here, which was my opening to getting people to understand that communication is not that complicated because people aren't difficult, they're just different. And then literally in the last 2 weeks, a new book came out. It's taken me nearly 8 years to finalize it all, called the Zookeeper Rules for the Office. And what we really wanted to do was to expand communication, that when life is working really well, communication is not complicated. But when we're under pressure or there's uncertainty or Brexit or whatever issues come about, how do you manage the animals in your workplace that go rogue? And so it's interesting when you said, I can be very, very funny, but I can sometimes get quite nasty without intentionally meaning to. Is because my animal type has just gone rogue in the forest, in the wilderness, in the jungle, in the Serengeti. So I'll expand on that as we talk through the presentation. But your people that you work with and your candidates and your clients are different animals. And if you get that into your head, life is much easier.
Great. So it's not personality profiling as such, but it's perhaps mapping people out into certain types. And in your example, you might use a monkey, for example, as one of those, Nigel. Is that correct?
Well, it is personality profiling in one way. The problem is, and I'm not being disrespectful to anyone else's personality profiling, but we spend most of our time finding out who we are. Well, unless you're finding a job for yourself and you're going to place yourself in a job and you are the client and the candidate, it doesn't really matter who you are. Do you have a technique to really identify the people you're communicating with in a very simple manner? And I devised a system that can really tell you in literally a minute or two the person you're dealing with, and then you can change your communication style to them.
Brilliant.
And I think that's the biggest issue in recruitment, is that when we're under pressure and there's lots of candidates about, we're speaking in the wrong language. And that's why I think we lose a minimum of 30% of our business.
Sure. People who read sales books widely will know about the technique of mirroring, where you can actually mirror the language or the way that somebody communicates with you. So I guess there's some of that in this, is there?
Well, I'm going to say yes and no, like I always do. If you try and mirror me, I will see it in a second, especially if that's not your natural tongue. So I want you to visualize a zoo and a zookeeper going up to one of the lions and mirroring a lion, okay? That is not a chance that the zookeeper is going to get the lion to act in a normal way. He's got to become a zookeeper and know what traits and what qualities that lion needs and feed him the food they want. Just mirroring, I'm afraid to say, isn't going to work, because you're not going to be you, and you're going to be so far at your comfort zones, which is why if you can visualize a squash court, do you play squash, Mike?
I did used to, actually, but not for a while. Yeah.
Okay, but you can probably still remember one thing. The person who holds the center of the court normally wins the point.
Yeah.
So you've got 4 corners, and that's where the animals go when they're wild. They go into their cages. The zookeeper's job is to get into the middle, look at the types of animals they're working with, and feed them the appropriate foods. Not necessarily become them, but become the middle ground and understand what's going on. And that's where I have a difference of opinion about mirroring. Not saying it doesn't work. Yeah. I'm just saying it's not the most effective.
Very interesting. Okay. So we got a Q&A today for you, Nigel. Some questions have come in. The first one, in your opinion, why do many businesses have poor or ineffective communication?
And I'm going to go back to something that I just said before, because most of the time they think their message is important and they're not understanding the person they're talking to. So when Sam, your colleague, sent me the PowerPoint presentation, first of all, I had to get into the PowerPoint presentation. Then I had to understand the questions. Then I had to go to slide review. And as a monkey, and I'm very simple, I just want to have it really simple with a cartoon, with a funny slide, with a little emoji saying, hello, and I get it in a second. So one of the problems is we often send communication the way we like to receive communication. So, you know, if you're a managing director of a large recruitment agency, you probably haven't got too long. You don't want to send flowery letters. You may not want to send detailed letters. You want to get the job done. Well, that may work for you, but it won't work for 75% of your applicants. So in my humble opinion, most people are communicating in the wrong language. So I've just come back from Israel. I was speaking there. My son got married there. So if I continue the rest of this webinar in Hebrew, it will be phenomenal. I've got to tell you, for me. But I'm not sure how many of your listeners will understand it.
Yeah.
And in a basic way, that's what it's like with communication. We're literally speaking the wrong language to 75% of our candidates and our clients. Now, if you had a sign up in front of you going, are you aware that 75% of all the audience you're talking to have not got a clue what you're talking about, you'd probably change.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't.
But building on that then, are there any signs that people can look out for to explain or to tell them whether communication is effective or not in the workplace?
Okay, so the easiest way is to watch people's body language, because we've learned about body language. So people like me, I'm bored in about a minute if you haven't made me laugh, smile, or entertain me really quickly. If you've got what I call a managing director, or you've got someone who think they are important, they want the message addressed to them, and they definitely don't want it to feel part of a group. So if you were emailing, if I was emailing you, Mike, I wouldn't send you an email as part of a CC. I would address it to you as the managing director. If you were a left-brained technical research analysis, I would not only send you an email, but I'd probably send you the questions in advance. I'd do a WinZip attachment. I'd give you a point of reference so that you had detail of who I am, what I am, and where my experience comes from. And that's just a quick example of recognizing the people you're dealing with, because certain groups of people aren't going to listen to a thing you've said unless they feel safe, secure, trusted, and knowledgeable. So they listen to your recruitment training blurb, your webinars, your seminars, because you've been in the industry more than a week, more than a year, more than 10 years, 20 years. You've got experience, but there's still a group of people that are going to want to go online to check you out. You know that, Mike?
Yes, absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what you tell them. They're going to be Googling. They're going to go on Wikipedia. They're going to go on the internet to check, because they think they know more about recruitment than you do.
Yeah.
People like me, though, I don't care as long as you make me feel special.
Okay. Well, let's look into those different animal types now. So the next question is from your book, of course. It's a zoo around here. You talk about the different inner animal personalities, and we've hinted at that early in this webinar, of course. But could you explain the theory of how you get those animal personalities in an office?
Okay, so let's go really basic for a traditional recruitment agency, if you don't mind. So traditionally, The owner operator, the manager, will have started an office, and most of the time they will either be what I call a lion who thinks he knows how to run a recruitment business, or a monkey that's a great salesperson who thinks he can do it on his own. And 95% of operators in the recruitment industry, the ones that I've met, and I've met literally 150, I think, are monkey stroke lions. So the lions are forceful, they're directful, they have a plan, they know what they want to do, and there's a system, and it's their way or the highway. And you'll know those type of people you've worked with because they think there's only one way of doing it. And some of them are old school, and they don't realize there's something called the internet, or they don't realize there's LinkedIn, or they don't realize there's new ways of working. Whereas some of the monkeys who were great salespeople in another recruitment agency who've now decided to go on their own, they've got no real system, but they've got the gift of the gab. They've got lots of energy. They're willing to go to lots of networking events. And they love doing a presentation. So your first two animals are lions and monkeys. And in the recruitment industry, you've got lots of them. Most of the fresh, young recruitment consultants are what I call monkeys. They're energetic, they're passionate, and they'll work very hard for 2 or 3 years, but they need to be motivated daily. They need to be motivated hourly. They need to be motivated weekly. They want lots of toys, gifts. They can't wait for a 6-month review. And then you have the bottom half, and that's no disrespect, they're as good as the top half, who are elephants and dolphins. And elephants are traditionally research analysis. They are clinical psychologists, they're engineers, they're lawyers, they're solicitors. They have a background of knowledge, and they can't take risks without having information. So before they ring a candidate up, they will have checked out 9 candidates, 9 jobs. They will have checked the internet. They'll have gone on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter to check the person out, because they will want all the information at hand, and they can't just go with their gut. And then you'll have the dolphins, who are team players, who are often office admin support, who want to make sure the company works well. Strangely enough, a lot of HR and training personnel are dolphins. Their main job is to make sure everyone else does well. They're the people that when they're on a plane, they don't put their own oxygen mask on first. They give it to their kids. The lions forget they've got kids and put their own oxygen mask on. The monkeys don't even listen to the instructions, so that's a separate issue. And the elephants have got a spare one just in case it doesn't fall down from above them.
Well, I've just put that little quadrant of yours on the screen, as you can see. And I'm just wondering for people on this webinar now, whether you're mentally putting yourself into mainly one of the quadrants. I guess there's traits that some people might have, a bit of lion, a bit of monkey, or a bit of monkey, and possibly a bit of dolphin.
Yeah.
Do you see that, where people have different traits?
Well, see, Mike, here's the point. Imagine I didn't turn up for this webinar, okay? And then you tried to get hold of me and you couldn't get through to me, and we promoted the webinar. I promise you, you would go into top right corner and go into lion mode, and then ring your office and say, did no one confirm with Nigel? And you'd be pretty pissed. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
To me, as a monkey, I'd be thinking, it's not a big deal. We'll record it another time. And to me, it's not that big a deal, but it is to a lion, because we had an appointment. We had an agreement. We've had it in writing. And whilst you might, with all the qualities you've got, you could probably mix between being a monkey and a dolphin. When you're let down and you're now being made to look silly, you will go into massive lion mode.
Mm-hmm.
As a monkey, I think I'm very good at doing what I call support work. I do a lot of work with counsellors. I do a lot of work with charities. And I do a lot of work, just for the record, with chief execs and with recruitment directors. But I'm terrible at following a system, which means the elephants get really upset with me, because I'm not very good at following through with diary notes. I'm not very good at following through with certain things. So I employ a phenomenal chief elephant officer. I mean, she's phenomenal at what she does, but hates speaking to people. So there are traits of everyone until you upset them, and then they will revert to home territory. And if you remember my squash analogy in the beginning, we're trying to get to the middle. But when I'm upset, when I'm sad, when I'm disappointed, when I've had 4 candidates go elsewhere, when the client's not returning me my phone call, I will go massively to my corner.
And Nigel, how could a recruitment manager or director use this thinking to get more out of their staff?
In a very simple way, Mike, if they looked at their staff right now and called a meeting for 8:30, for example, next Monday morning, I promise you the monkeys would come in probably a little bit late, haven't had coffee yet, and they probably aren't ready for the meeting. The lions will be there 5 minutes before with their Gucci bag. The elephants will have been there an hour before, and they'll have notes ready for the meeting, and the dolphins will be making everyone tea. And that's just not an observation. That's what happens 95% of the time for the average meeting. So you could observe your team very easily and notice where they fit in. And then as the meeting goes on, you will find the monkeys get distracted very, very quickly. And any meeting that's longer than 20 minutes is too long for them. For the lions, any meeting that's 30 minutes long is probably too long, and they need to feel they're contributing. The elephants could be there all day, as long as they're being given fed information. And for the dolphins, they want to make sure it's going to make the team more effective. And if it's not making the team more effective, they don't understand why we're having a meeting. So if you are running a team meeting, how dynamic is your presentation? How interactive is your presentation? How thought out is your presentation? And how caring is your presentation? And for most of the people listening to this, they'll be good at one of the four, maybe two of the four. But I swear to God, I've yet to meet a manager of a recruitment company that's good at all four.
Interesting. We just got a question coming in the chat room. Thank you, Joseph. By the way, if anybody else has a question, please pop it in the chat room. We'll try our best to cover them off depending upon time. So Joseph's question is, how could we roll this out to clients, i.e. understand which animals they are missing within their team to help with culture and so on?
Okay, so just recognize that culture is a separate subject. Companies don't have a culture, people have a culture, and people's culture is based on their animal type. So is Joseph asking, how do we find out what our clients' animal types are?
Joseph, if you could let us know in the chat room. The way I read that question while he's perhaps pausing to write is, I wonder if there's a business development edge for a recruitment company to have a deeper understanding of your thinking, Nigel. So if we can talk the talk, go down to see a customer and open their eyes to different team types like this, to then spot gaps that we might be able to then fill for them.
Okay, I'm now with you. So if we look at a consultant who is trying to assist a company with the right recruitment, there are 2 points to it. You know, what missing gaps are there in their employment, with the staff that are employed? And 2, do they know and identify what type of people will add value to their company? So if you had a sales organization and you had loads and loads of monkeys, it would be lots and lots of fun, but not much gets done. So what we'd want to try and make sure is there's an elephant in the camp somewhere who's going to structure and organize those monkeys so systems are in place. If you were working with a technical company and there are lots and lots of elephants, you want to try and find out, is there someone with a bit of passion, energy, who's willing to talk to customers, and they probably might need a monkey. But going deeper than that, if you ask staff and if you ask people basic questions, they will give you answers. So, you know, if you organized a team meeting, how many people actually contribute? When you organize team meetings, how many people turn up? How many people are late? And it would let them know really quickly what type of staff they've got. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Joseph just replied,
Yep.
and his comment says, so a client said that he would rather understand what type of personalities, skills they are missing in the team. Example, they have all mostly monkeys, some lions and dolphins, but no elephants. Could you use this example, he's saying, to suggest that a certain type is what they need and then get back to them with some profiling?
Yeah, because what you're going to find is lots and lots of organizations employ their own like-minded people. So, you know, when I had a finance company, I had lots and lots of people who were similar to me, and I had absolutely no dolphins whatsoever. So we were really strong on culture, and we banged out loads of loan applications, and we had lots of detail. But we had a lot of staff that kept leaving because they didn't feel loved, nurtured, and cared for. And I didn't understand that car parking was important. I didn't understand they wanted breaks, and they wanted to. Some of them wanted to go home. Can you believe this, early on a Friday to see their family? Apparently, that's quite important. Well, I didn't understand that concept 30 years ago, and I just thought they were lazy. Well, you need to understand that people have needs. So for Joseph, in a way, what he could share with them is that not having an elephant in their team, not having someone who's logistical, not having someone who understands the questions that need to be answered, that they can have lots of energy, but there's not going to be much detail. And if he then looked through his database of anybody who was a bit left-brained, who'd finished university and then did a master's, a lot of elephants like studying. They do a master's, even though they don't even know what they're going to do yet. They think if they have more education, that will better themselves when they find a job. Monkeys get a degree really quickly in something they like, and they really continue their education.
Interesting. Do you know the thing there about the caring side? Most recruitment companies could do with a dose of that, you know, because if you think at staff turnover in the industry, it is high.
And, well, that's because there is a lion or monkey who is running the show, who thinks as long as we're all having fun, that's okay. And then what the monkeys do, they'll go out on a corporate evening and they'll go to the bar afterwards. You know, a lot of these people have got, as they're getting a little bit older, they've got kids or they've got families and they're living further out from London, for example. They need to get home. But the Dolphins, that's what they're brilliant at, making sure that people's personal needs are being met.
Brilliant. And by the way, Joseph's just said, that's amazing. Exactly what my client recently asked for. His final question there, before we move on to the next slide, is there a preferred ratio or a perfect blend of animal types?
Okay, so you won't have too many lions, okay? So if you use your organization, Mike, if there were 9 mics in the organization, can you imagine what would happen when you came to a meeting? Because every one of you would want to make the final decision. So you won't have that many lions. And in my latest book, we've actually added another animal. Well, we've added 6 other animals, but a main animal, which is called a leopard. And a leopard in recruitment terms is a guy or girl who likes working on their own and is very, very disciplined, but they don't want to be part of the team. So you could have a really good team member who isn't a team player. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they've got their 12 clients or they've got their 17 clients and they don't want to join in with the rest of the gang and they don't want to go to parties. And you can't make them team players. Leopards, if you know much about them, hunt on their own. They take their food to the trees on their own. And the only time they see another leopard, if it's female, is when they want to mate. They don't interact with other people. Lions need a pride. They need to play with people.
Interesting, Nigel. And oh, by the way, we're getting lots of positive feedback coming into the chat room and thumbs up and so on, which is great. And which just reminds me, I forgot to mention your kind offer that anyone on the webinar could get your latest book at 50% off. Is that correct?
Well, they can buy both books for £20 instead of £16 each. So this is just for people who've listened to this and are part of your network. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion then? If anybody's interested in that, just to connect with Nigel directly on LinkedIn and just mention that, and then, you know, at least there's a trace on that.
And my chief elephant officer, who is, she is called the CEO. So she's the chief elephant officer. That's what she does, because she doesn't ring people. She just emails all day long because she likes that.
Okay, brilliant. Next question on communication, going deeper. Should all communication should it take place the same way? For example, a one-to-one appraisal for each member of staff, should it be the same?
Okay, that's a really cool question because I get asked this a lot. So first of all, if you look at the 4 animals, monkeys need one-to-ones literally daily, okay? Now that's going to confuse you. They need interaction virtually every day, every hour, and it's exhausting, but they need lots and lots of appraisals because they can't wait 3 months because you'll probably find they've gone up the jungle, up the trees at this point. So if you have monkeys in your team who are very energetic, they need lots of strokes, they need lots of acknowledgement daily. Do not wait for an appraisal. And if you look at the word appraisal and you take off the first A and the P and the L, it's really about praise. And monkeys need lots of it. Lions, by the way, need a one-to-one in your formal office or at a very nice restaurant because they think they're very important people. But they don't want any shocks or surprises. Elephants have to have their appraisal in writing in advance, which sounds bizarre. It's no use having an appraisal with an elephant and then asking them questions which they haven't got time to think about. They will go in what I call into stutter mode. They will get confused, upset, because they want to know the questions in advance. And from a dolphin's point of view, you have got to make sure you are seated on the same side as the table as them, and you never use the words disappointed.
Interesting. Yeah. So you know, if you look at football managers, and famously they talk about putting an arm around someone, give them the hairdryer treatment, you know, arm around the shoulder, kick up
let's
the
just
bum.
clarify on that. You can put your arm around a dolphin or a monkey. You definitely don't want to put your arm around a lion or an elephant.
Mm.
And this has got nothing to do with sex misconduct and everything else. Monkeys and dolphins can cope with physical connection. Elephants and lions, they just freak out.
Yeah. I was really thinking about communication style. It's like altering your style depending upon the person, isn't it?
But it's even more so that you've got to understand that monkeys need lots of it, and they can't have any negative feedback. You're either going to inspire a monkey or fire them. There's no middle ground for them.
Interesting. Next question. Can your theory also apply to the way we handle emails and general messaging communication, LinkedIn messages and so on?
Okay, so again, if you write to somebody and you don't understand their language, then you need to do a general email that contains at least 3 of the animal types, so that when they reply back to you, you will know very clearly what animal they are. So I often write to people going, "Hi, Mike, it's Nige here. I just want to confirm we're doing this webinar. I'll see you soon. Love you lots. Bye." Now, that's pretty clear that I'm a monkey writing to you. But if it was the very first time I wrote to you, I'd probably do it slightly differently by going, "Hi, Mike. I understand we've got a webinar happening next week. I think it's at 3 o'clock. If you could just confirm, I'm really excited to work with you. Let me know." So there's a bit of excitement there, but it's a little bit more formal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If it was an elephant that I thought I was dealing with, so I've just done something with, I do a lot with facility management, and I do a lot with workplace environments. And there's lots of designers and there's lots of elephants in there. And I often send them a separate email to list some questions I want to know in advance, so I can give them more detail of a basic question. So even if I was going out to eat with somebody, I would send them an email with a map of where I'm coming from, where I should be going, if there's car parking arrangements, a menu of the restaurant, and it all sounds over the top, but to an elephant, that's exciting for them.
Okay, interesting.
So every email, if you look at most people's LinkedIn profile, I promise you, I could work out 95% of people's profile just looking at their front page. And if you look at my profile on LinkedIn, it says Chief Zookeeper. Now, the elephants get really annoyed with me because, well, what does that mean? I'd like to know if you've got any qualifications in the medical field. And are you a vet? Well, no, I don't, but I thought it was funny. Okay, and it's pretty clear what I do. But it isn't to 25% of the world, and you will never get it right for 100%. But I think I'm really good for 75%, and I'm working on the other 25%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, interesting. We're going to move on to case studies in a moment, but just a question on emails and messaging a bit deeper, really, because over the years, I've seen people make big mistakes on emails where they receive an email, it makes their blood boil, then they respond to that, and then the person at the other end makes their blood boil, and then they respond back again. And there's hours and hours of time eaten up when a simple phone call, they say, "Oh, no, I didn't mean that. Sorry, let me explain it." So,
well, one of the biggest issues in communication is hidden communication. So my PA, who's been with me 25 years, so you would think we have an understanding. There are times I send her a text or an email going, "Have you sent an email to Mike?" Now, I think that's pretty simple. Would you agree?
Yeah.
What she hears is, "I don't trust her. You're checking up on me. I've only worked for you for 25 years. Do you not believe I can do this basic work?" And I know you've gone quiet because you're thinking, how could she think that? Because that's how she feels when you check up on an elephant.
Yeah,
she knows her job. "I can't believe you're asking me. Of course I've sent Mike an email. You asked me to do it, so I've done it.
Yeah.
I'm just asking because I've forgotten if I've even sent it to you."
Yeah, I see, yeah.
So I don't send those type of emails anymore. I'll ring Alison up and I'll say, "Do me a favour, did you speak to Mike? I can't remember." And she'll go, "Yes, I've done it." Because an email sounds very different to communication over the phone.
Yeah.
A Zoom call, FaceTime, all this stuff is there. If you could get on the phone and ring somebody, 80% of your emails could be eliminated. But the reason we send emails is because we get it off our back. It's a bit the old phrase, "get the monkey off your back." And then we send it to other people to let other people know we've done it, so everyone knows I'm not responsible anymore. I've watched people in recruitment offices email the person sitting next to them.
Mm. It's crazy,
I mean,
Nigel.
literally,
Yeah.
you could spit nearer than how long you took the email. And you go,
Yeah.
why didn't you ring them? And what they're really saying is, well, I wanted them to have proof that I'd done it.
Yeah.
So a phone call is much, much better for most people.
Yeah,
except if you're an elephant. Unless you're an elephant.
My old boss taught me something years ago. You get this War and Peace email, and he said that he never answers his emails. He just replies saying, "Please, can you give me a call?"
Yeah, because he was a classic line, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what he was really saying was, tell me in one line what you want me to do, or ring me and tell me the one thing you want me to do. I'm not reading 4 pages when what you're really saying is, can I go to the toilet, yes or no? But I don't want to explain the latrine toilet laws from 1937 to 1942 and the size of the toilet and the water system. They don't need to know that.
Yeah.
But elephants do. And that's why you find lots of research, especially in employment recruitment companies, where you've got research people who are going onto LinkedIn. They love an email because they've got it off their desk. They don't like ringing people. Monkeys and lions like a conversation. Elephants and dolphins much prefer an email. Interesting.
So, do you have any stories you could share with us about how businesses have seen a dramatic uplift in productivity through some of the things you're talking about and improving communication?
So one of the things is Monday morning meetings. So I don't know, you've been around recruitment companies for a long time. You know, these daily meetings are nearly a waste of time if it's not structured to the animals. So we have worked on a number of companies where the very first thing in any meeting we have is there's got to be celebrations. So you come into the room and everyone's got to share a success. And if they don't have a success, the manager's job is to find out why they've had no success. The second thing is the meeting positive and there's no third-party gossiping and we're not doing it part of the BMW game, which is called bitching, moaning and whining. If it's a Monday morning meeting, it's an upbeat meeting. But the biggest success we've had is not starting and finishing with 2 things. We're not starting with apologies and we're not finishing with AOB, which is any other business. It must be AIB, any interesting business. And we've worked with from HSBC to Feltham Young Offenders to some of the biggest organizations literally around the world. And every organization that's structured their meetings in what I call a 25-minute meeting, which means you've got to get all your information in 25 minutes, upbeat, you can't talk about the past. People come out the meeting more inspired than they came in. Do you support a football team, Mike?
I do.
What's your team?
Man United.
Okay, so I can't remember what the result was over the weekend, good or bad?
3-3.
Okay, so you're probably feeling 6 out of 10 on a Monday morning. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
After that result?
Yeah.
If I'm your manager and we have a meeting, I've got to make you feel at least 7 or 8 out of 10 after the meeting. Would you agree?
Yeah.
If you had have won 6-0, what would your score be out of 10?
9.5.
Okay, I've got to be absolutely phenomenal to have a team meeting with you and make you feel better.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've done a lot of work on is for the manager to understand the people they're having a meeting with, to see how do we enhance their self-esteem, how do we enhance the potential they've got going. Because if you're feeling a 9.5, do you know what you should be doing? Ringing up 10 people.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be having a team meeting. And we've got evidence beyond belief that anybody who has a staff meeting on a Monday morning and doesn't enhance the score by at least 1 mark has wasted 3 hours of their lives.
Mm.
And, you know, if you think that time period on a Monday morning, they've come in off the weekend, they've had a good weekend, and they want to get going, maybe you should do your staff meeting at 1 o'clock over lunch, if that's not your busy period. But not when they're eager to get going. And you definitely don't want to do a team meeting at 5 o'clock when they want to go home.
You know, it's really interesting what you're talking about here. We had a speaker who talked about measuring motivation, and he's got a tool that can analyze that. And I think he was talking about skills out of 10 coupled with your personal motivation out of 10. Multiply that and you get a result. So if your skill is 6 out of 10 and your motivation is 6 out of 10, then you've got 36% out of 100, obviously.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about here is almost as a manager, working out how to better communicate to turbocharge that. So using that same metric, 6 out of 10 with 9 out of 10 motivation, you got 54% rather than 36.
Okay,
So,
you're now going elephant on me, so I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, but I'm understanding most of it. The concept is, if they're feeling great, let them get on with it. And if they're not feeling great, don't beat them up and tell them how shit they were, pardon my French, how bad they were last week. Boost them up, and then have a separate meeting at lunchtime to find out what's going on in their personal lives. And that's where you really have to be a therapist, a counselor, a parent, a coach, a mentor, but not if you want to get results. And sometimes you've got to send people home and say, you know what, the best thing you do today is have a day off. Your negative energy can affect the team. And we talk about this a lot in the book, that, you know, if you've got really good energy and you have what I call a psychic vampire come into your organization, you will bring the team down.
Yeah, I've seen that on a number of occasions with, you know, stories I've heard from. I've probably worked with about 300 recruitment CEOs now over the years.
Yeah.
And the number of times I've heard people say they finally fired somebody, and despite the big billings, they actually ended up billing far more. In fact, one example was really interesting. There were 2 people who'd hired in this audience who'd hired the same individual. And the first business, she was billing 300,000. She left. Billings went up collectively as a team because she was a psychic vampire. She then joined this other company and she did 400K. And most recruitment business owners would think, oh, great. But actually, the second business also fired her, psychic vampire. The same thing happened. Collectively, the billings went up through the team after she left, really.
Yeah, but you see, what's interesting, if you remember your football stories and about, you know, Alex Ferguson in throwing the boot and him getting rid of David Beckham, no one was bigger than the team. And sometimes one of your members, and I hate using this phrase, is what I call an internal terrorist. And in the new book, when animals go rogue, and I'm one of them occasionally, from being this happy monkey, I can be a hyena. And I'm telling you now, when I play hyena, I'm havoc in the workplace. Elephants, by the way, go very solitary, they go very nasty, and they go rhino, and they hide, they go into their little office, and then they charge you with documentation. But worse are your dolphins, because you know what dolphins turn into? Sharks. And what they'll do is they'll start circling and pick off the weakest people, and they'll start bullying some of the junior team members. So every animal can be pushed to the limit, and they are what I call internal terrorists. And there's only 2 things you do with them. You either get them on board or you let them go to your biggest competitor. You know, I'd give them £100, put them in an Uber and let them be a terrorist somewhere else. Because you cannot teach nice. I just want to leave you in a way with that message. You can't teach nice. It would be much better to employ a nice person with no education, with no experience in recruitment, than hire someone with experience who's not nice.
Well, do you know, one of my friends, he said he'd had a new baby, and he said, you know, I said, what do you want for them in life? And he said, you know what? I want them to grow up with good manners, to be able to say please and thank you. He said, if I achieve that, it doesn't matter what they do ultimately, as long as they're nice people. A lot to be said for that. And in recruitment, you've got to be nice. You're in the middle. You make the candidate feel good. You make the client feel good. You pull the deal together. So you've got to have that pleasantness. So Nigel,
imagine that was on the recruitment. That was on the front page of the advert. We're looking for nice people.
Yeah.
You'd lose half your candidates.
How do you mean?
Well, because they're not nice. Some of them, they're very well qualified, but they're not nice. They're not pleasant. Just for the record, and I'll leave you with this last thought. I de-hire 2 clients every year because they're not nice to work with.
Yeah.
You'll be pleased to know, Mike, you made it this year. Okay. But seriously, every year I sit down with Alison and the team and we look at who wasn't nice to us, who gave us grief, who paid us late, whatever. And we de-hire 2 people who aren't nice every single year.
Interesting. Well, that leads us on to final questions. So in the chat room, if anyone has a question, just please pop that in. Or if you could just for speed, just put a yes or something, so I know there's a question coming. And then if not, I'll assume there are no questions coming. Because I appreciate it takes time to type the question.
Not for the Lions.
Here we go. There's a question coming in. And This is Rosie. So Rosie's got a question coming shortly. Whilst we're just waiting for Rosie's question, Nigel, just to say a big thank you for today. I always find it enlightening. No matter how many times I've seen you present, and I've seen you a number of times over the years, and read some of your material, of course, there's always something that I can take away. So I'm very grateful for that. So I think Rosie's question's coming in. Is it ever possible for people to train themselves to switch between animals? So if you want to, or train that person, can you change the type of person you are in effect?
Okay, great question, and it's a brilliant one nearly to close the program. So I'm a monkey. I've worked a lot with CEOs, and I've done a lot with the NHS, with housing and charities. So I can understand what the lions want. They want short, sharp answers, quick answers. They don't want long answers. They want it direct to them. And I understand that the Dolphins would like me to be nice, make sure their personality is looked after, make sure we've got fair trade tea, and we have lots of breaks. So I can understand the other two quadrants. It's really hard for me to be an elephant and understand. Doesn't matter what I provide for them, it's never enough information. So I said before, I'm good at 75% of communication. Apparently, I'm a world authority in communication. I've written 2 great books on communication, and I still struggle because when I start getting lazy or when I get tired, I revert back into my monkey camp. So you can train people to understand lions, and you can train people to understand being a dolphin. But as much as I try, I just can't seem to make sure that the elephants have all the information they need. So I employ and I work with 2 elephants. So I don't think anybody can be good at all 4, for the record. Now, there's going to be somebody on this webinar who says, well, I'm brilliant at it. Well, then teach me. Because you don't have time, but more importantly, if you go too far off your quadrant, you're not being yourself. So if all of a sudden I started replying as an elephant, someone would say, that's not Nigel, he's not being himself. We've lost some of that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Nigel, that was terrific. Thank you very much, my friend, for joining us today and sharing some of your knowledge.
And I look forward in 6 months' time to come back again and go through the other animals with you.
Love to do that. And once again, anyone listening, please connect with Nigel, take advantage of his offer, his kind offer today. Nigel, look forward to working with you again in the near future.
Brilliant. Have a great Christmas, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. All the best, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.